It's time for your next favorite episode of the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene.
Wednesday morning, time for your next favorite episode of the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene. Jolene, how the heck are you?
Oh, here I am. I'm good.
You're good?
Am I good?
You seem good.
I'm good, yeah.
You're upright. That's an important first step to being good on a daily
I'm up
basis.
and I'm right and I'm upright.
Yeah.
You guys hear that? He said I was right.
I did.
Wait. How is Jason?
Jason's good too, you know? It's crazy. This is like the penultimate episode of season 3.
You're not down wrong.
I'm not down wrong. What the fuck does that mean?
Upright.
Oh, it was a play on words. Very
get that?
punny. Very punny, Jolene.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. Second to last episode of the season, folks. I can't believe how quickly these 29 episodes have gone.
Isn't that sad?
It is, because then you won't hear new stuff from us until like the fall.
But we will be stewing and brewing and marinating some new eps.
We will, which we can talk more about that
next week.
Yes, haha, because we planned ahead this time. This week, we're talking martyrdom.
Martyring, the martyring wound. And we're talking about this in relation to Mother's Day. And a lot of times when I'm in my office, I am helping primarily women. This issue comes up in the feminine wound of our ancestral healing. So it's interesting because when I look up, what does it mean if someone is a martyr? And my little Google answer comes up with 2 answers. One has a religious origin, which I think suggests a lot of the moral obligation that we feel. So this martyr is a person who voluntarily suffers death as the penalty of witnessing to and refusing to renounce a religion.
Ooh.
2, a person who sacrifices something of great value and especially life itself for the sake of principle.
I like that.
Right?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
And honestly, when we say like suffer death, really it's death of choice. It's self-abandonment. I mean, that's where a lot of the martyring comes from in terms of our female wounds. I talk a lot about like my mom's generation and how, you know, women didn't have necessarily as many freedom, rights, opportunity back then. So where did they excel in their opportunity? It was for caring for their family. The more they could do, the more they could produce, the more they could nurture, the more they could start to keep up with the patriarch, which was beginning to enter the workforce, be recognized, and start becoming productive in society in a way outside of the home that it was valued. That is where so much of this martyring came from, is how much do I sacrifice of myself to care for those around me?
Yeah. And I know even my wife feels that a bit at times, right?
Oh,
like having to set her stuff aside in favor of like Griffin's sick today. So she has to put it aside to help take care of him.
Absolutely.
Or what have you. Yeah. And that's, I think, something a lot of women I know who are mothers especially feel.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand why this is. Like everyone will say, yeah, that's me. Like, and everyone says that. So what makes it unique? Well, it is a phenomena, and it is a result of motherhood in many cases, parenthood, if you want to expand it.
Yep.
Because I'm going to give you some biology on this. And this is something, again, not backed by research that I'm aware of because I haven't looked, but this is what makes sense to me when I see these patterns. When conception occurs in the woman's body, we self-abandon instantly. Our immune system shuts down. And we allow an alien to grow inside of us. That is what this is. It's a foreign alien. It's a foreign object, essentially. And then we feed it and we nurture it. Okay? And that is the biggest form of self-abandonment. So that happens at a biological level. Then when that child is born, we give our nutrients. We continue to give our nutrients time and attention, often waking up in the middle of the night, changing how we live, often having to think of their needs before ours, a lot of those kinds of things, naturally as part of that stage of life, that role that we play now. So some of this is definitely nature, some of it's nurture, and some of it is just, when you're a parent, this is what you do, right? So you have to understand that biological component of it, right? Then we can expand away from that and go, okay, what other things contribute to, and I'm going to speak women right now because we're talking about Mother's Day and some of the common themes. What also contributes to us self-abandoning, sacrificing our preferences, our choices, our everything, just to make life easier, to keep harmony, to maintain relationships, the origin of this can be so big, right? So sometimes if there's, two different meals to make, the mom will often choose to make the meal the kids are going to eat, not the one she's going to eat, because she can be flexible. And this is where adaptability and flexibility comes in. I'm sure we've had an episode on that before.
Oh, we have.
And there's these beautiful flexible pieces, but when we're always choosing something else over ourselves, it starts to breed resentment. And that is why this episode is so important, guys, because this is where a lot of resentment, lack of pleasure, lack of satisfaction in life originates from. So I had a really cool conversation with a client the other day. And we actually patterned this way back, because it's one thing to go like, oh yeah, I'm a people pleaser. Well, yeah, I know that. But why?
Yeah, what
right?
has made you feel like you need to
Why?
please other people?
This takes it so much deeper.
Yeah.
So we took it back for this person to attachment to primary caregivers. There was an insecure attachment and inconsistency between one parent and herself in terms of, I don't feel important enough. I don't feel lovable. I don't feel chosen. This parent always chose other people, pleasing their friends, the neighbors, whoever else, except for her, right?
Gotcha.
Never choosing her. And that was their wound of rejection and being accepted elsewhere. I'm sure that drove that. But for the child, this woman, that feels like I'm not good enough. Right?
Oh, for sure it does.
So because of that, we will then become good enough in the relationships around us to secure connection. How do we do that? Through codependent patterns, such as making people need us. Pack moms, sports volunteers, the neighbor who shows up for everything, the friend who overgives all the time and like burns herself out showing up for people and says, my friends don't do the same thing back. This is over-functioning, martyring behavior in attempts to secure connection. Why is it important to secure connection? Because that is a survival need. As a child, when we don't have solid and predictable connection with our parent, we fear death because we rely on them to keep us alive. So that transfers from our nervous system into our other relationships. People won't choose me unless they need me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And I think we all know many people like that or have been that in some way, shape, or form ourselves.
75
right?
or more of the percentage of the population for sure has been here.
Yeah.
Until you consciously stop doing it and heal that, most of us are or have done this in our lifetime.
Yeah. Well, I know
Absolutely.
I was for years, that was me. And even at jobs, like at work, I would make myself invaluable and work longer and take on things I didn't need or want to take on because of a need that if I do this, they can't get rid of me. Right?
And we want to normalize this. Like this should be impacting everybody. If it doesn't, awesome. You got a bonus. You got a get out of jail free card. Most people are impacted by this phenomena in one way or another. Okay.
Big time.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing is understanding, why do I do this? And I think that in our self-help culture, we talk about those dynamics as, oh, I'm in all these toxic friendships. They just take from me. And I'm like, okay, let's non-toxic this and look at how you're feeding the poison. That's all. Understand what your wound is. Understand what part you can change in it. And suddenly you're not in a toxic situation anymore. Because you're probably not going to be in that situation. So this is where when people are so overt at looking at some of those relationships, I'm like, oh, reel it back in and let's see which one of your wounds is feeding this. Like a little like sourdough feeder, like what's keeping it brewing.
Why sourdough?
Because I feel like that's, did I just say like a starter or something?
Sourdough
feeding it.
Sourdough,
Yeah. I have a lot of sourdough stuff on my news feed because I'd really love to learn how to do it, but I ain't got time for that shit, guys.
No, same.
I don't have time yet.
That was an aside.
Yeah. Why you gotta be so sour?
Right?
Yeah, that, right? So have a look around your life. I want you to notice the people. First and foremost, go to your mama, okay? So I have some people who hold a lot of resentment because they saw where their mom was like that or this and that. And I've had some really cool opportunities to like take the adult and have them look at, oh my gosh, as an adult to adult instead of child looking at their parent. I can really, really compassionately understand what my mom was going through, and especially in society back then. So my mom's generation, your mom's into your grandma's, like, man, to get street cred, it was hard to work your way. Like I look at where I have privilege and opportunity as a woman now that my ancestors didn't have. and couldn't walk around and have people hear their voice and respect their opinions, right?
Oh, yeah.
They didn't speak up in certain ways because they lacked the confidence to do so. Imagine how many unmet dreams are out there because they fueled other people's dreams. And I think it's really beautiful. You know, behind every man is a supportive woman kind of concept. I think that's beautiful, and I think that's wonderful partnerhood. But man, I look at how my man supports me and my dreams and what I'm expanding into, and I'm like, imagine how many women out there had dropped dreams.
Oh, I'd say a whole generation of them.
Yeah.
Probably. There's the odd one, and
Yeah.
not odd, I
Yeah.
mean weird, but the occasional
Yeah.
one that did just because, or refused to get married, or just
Yeah.
was going to do their thing. But they were probably then in some way ostracized or criticized by the majority of the women around them for not doing, where's your husband? They were like called a spinster or something. You know what I mean?
And that is where lateral oppression between women came in. So many women fight with this, well, I'm busy working and I work all these hours and I do all this stuff. And look at her. She doesn't work because her husband does this and she gets her nails done. And look at her, she's on vacation. There's so much hate and shade between women that way. It has been. I think it's getting better because ultimately there is this martyring and over-functioning wound that then burn women out of what some of their biggest superpowers were, which was receiving and nurturing and creating the softness in that polarity of a relationship to then be able to expand and be successful in whatever other ways. But we kind of burnt that out, right? And we hate on people who kind of have that ideal.
We do, yeah, as a society in general.
Yeah,
now.
just in
Yeah,
general,
yeah.
right? Like and I know I've mentioned this in other episodes, like when I see friends go on vacation and stuff, like I'm not on vacation. I'm nowhere near vacation right now. And I'm just like, soak it up, girlfriend. Like brag about your tan when you get back. Send me more pictures. Like I get excited when other people succeed. I wasn't always like that though.
No, nor was I. And it took a lot of work to get to the point where then I do appreciate other people's successes. And for those out there who are like, get resentful of seeing other people's successes. I found once I could get over that and start appreciating other people's successes, I too started to find success.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a reason to do that, but I just found they go hand in hand. There's something, your mindset needs to shift on that.
Jealousy often points to the thing you desire most in life.
Yeah.
Right? The more jealous we are, the more hate we have for someone with something really shows us that's what we're desiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite beautiful when you can then look. And really, what is the threat of that? That's probably a bit of a lack wound in terms of I'm worried there's not enough to go around.
Yeah.
They have it, therefore I can't have it. And this is where a lot of like buzzwords be like abundance mindset and all of that kind of healing that people do to recognize there is enough for everyone.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course there
but
is.
we are taught in the in politics, in Western culture, that you have to fight your way to the top to gain that.
Yeah.
Rather than recognizing like, anybody could have it.
Exactly. Maybe in not the same way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
but the version of it for you is there.
Totally.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you could. But
Yeah.
we hog that, and the people who are insecure about sharing that and fearing that there's not enough for everyone are the ones that try and hog it.
Yes, big time.
Yeah, and that's where I stay in my own lane. And we're going to talk about that next week when I talk about expansion and stuff, and I'll explain where this mindset created a business plan for me in terms of there is plenty for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone, I too can share my little story on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jason, when you look at the martyring wound, where do you see it impacting you, your life, your family, anything like that?
I know, like I mentioned earlier, my wife feels that from time to time. And then for some reason, and it's something we have to work through, I'm made to feel responsible for that in some way, shape, or form. And it's like, no, like,
That's where
you know what I mean?
resentment comes
That's where
in.
resentment comes in. And then it's like, no. And so it leads to many discussions between the two of us, because as you said, there's also like, she'll go like, well, I need to take care of you guys. And I'm like, well, you don't need to take care of me, for one.
Yeah.
And nor do you really need to take care of Griffin anymore, unless he's real, which is maybe part of it too, but he's at a point he's needing less and less. So that's something internal to look at there, right? Like, because we actually do fine.
Yes,
Like, you
but
know-
here's the thing. Go back to what I said about women earning their keep in the workforce. What's viewed as your portion of what you're doing, right? So if there are areas she doesn't feel like she's contributing to the rest of the household, then she will put more emphasis on the care nurturing components.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And it's gotten a bit better lately as she's kind of gone off and done her own art thing, and it's starting to go somewhere too. But it was definitely something
for sure
in the past, right?
Wow. Yeah. And then that is the biggest thing. And let's face it, that is a default in many ways. You know, I joke around all the time. I have a lot of new moms that see me, and I remember being there too, right? And I happen to not have a good partnership during those times of my life. But I do still think that some of these things are what healthy couples would experience as well. For sure. Is like a man never has to check when he can book a hair appointment. Right?
No, you don't.
Have you ever asked, would it work if I booked a hair appointment on this Tuesday at blah, blah, blah?
No.
No. Every woman has to double check before she books a hair appointment. Every woman. Is my child somewhere? Right?
Or what time is this going to happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that right there just shows responsibility. Who is the default caregiver, typically with family and stuff, and just what that ounce of freedom is for that to not feel like that is your responsibility or always have to work around. So I use the hairdressing option because it's like 3 times a year.
If that.
And it's such a big deal. So that's one thing. And it happens everywhere. Anytime something needs to be scheduled, arranged, organized, that is also the mental capacity of what's being assumed for responsibility, right?
Yeah, which is so interesting.
It really is. And it's just a dynamic. And sometimes I have people and it's like they can complain about it and validate the complaint. Absolutely. Yeah, that is kind of shitty. Can we change it? Probably not. No. Let's be real. Probably not. So sometimes it's accepting that in that role, that is just one of the things that is a heavier duty or burden. And when both partners know that, then there is an active reach out of I just want to make sure everything's good. Is there anything I can help with that would free you up for something you needed? And these are hard things. This is where most couples are I can't verbalize what it is that I need because there's so much, right?
Oh yeah. There was, my wife and I had one that was an argument that there was something needed to be done around the house and needed my help. And I'm like, well, what? Tell me and I'll just go do it.
Yeah.
And she's like, she couldn't quite figure out what it was. And I'm like, just name it. If there's something, she's like, well, you should see it. I'm like, if I don't know what I'm looking for.
I just need you to look around and notice it.
You know what I mean? But it's but what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And these are dynamics, right? And because somebody has assumed that martyring role over responsibility, I will sacrifice myself. There's a lot of things that come out of that. You teach the people around you that you require less care and attention. You teach them that you will choose yourself last. I've talked about this before. I do this from a budget standpoint and a waistline standpoint sometimes. And I think Kevin probably thinks I'm ridiculous for it, but my kids will say, it even happened the other day when we, after hockey out of town, and my mom was there and we took her for lunch. And she was like, oh, what are you getting? And the kid said, oh, mom doesn't order anything. She just eats what's left over. And it's true, guys. I don't order a meal often if we go to a dinner restaurant, but if we're having lunch somewhere, I will eat what is left over from my kids.
Because they're not going to eat all of it anyways, right?
Right. And it's such a waste of food and a waste of money. Things are so expensive now. And I often have my own snacks. I'll have a protein bar. I'll have an apple. I can make do. But that also teaches them that I'm not truly choosing me. I've talked to my kids about this and why I'm choosing budget over anything at that point. But, before I explained that to them, they just saw me okay with the scraps. Mom's okay with the scraps. And that was so fucking symbolic of some of my life for a good period of time. I was okay with the scraps, right? Yeah. But that, through that behavior, we teach people that. We teach them what we need, right? So I look at my mom and some of her martyring behaviors, and I never saw my mom truly care for herself, right? That was unknown in that generation. And, I just go back and I'm like, God, that makes me feel so sad. She got quite ripped off and many things taken for granted for just who she was and what she offered, right? And we can't go back and change that, but we can honor the shit out of it and know that everyone who was a product of that, so myself, Jess, anyone else, is actively healing that now, right? And my mom went through my workshop, first time I ran it, I think, and learned so much about this and went, oh my gosh, right?
Oh, yeah.
So everything that I'm actively healing so that my daughters don't see as much of that, and they certainly see a good amount of it. I'm not nearly as close to being there as I'd like to be, but for the most part is better than what I experienced with my mom, right?
Yeah, well, I think each generation is doing the best to
Yes.
improve and heal upon these things. I think as best as we can.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely, right? So for myself, I would say those were some of the martyr wounds I absolutely experienced myself. I also think it's a stage of life thing too. So I think that through those early stages of life where we are establishing ourselves in our career and we're eager and we're like chasing seniority and respect and credibility and reputation, we're going for it. And then we reach the middle of the ground where we're like, okay, we're established. We don't have to chase anything anymore. We've got like security. We've got connection, just like a secure attachment, right? In our lives, in our connections. Then we reach our honey badger era. We don't give a fuck. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Not more than we have to, right?
Yep.
And it's beautiful. And we go through this in different stages. Like I think through a 10 to 15 year time span between 40 and 55, you'll see a whole mixture of them. So you'll look amongst your group and they'll be like, man, Jason, I wish I could set a fucking boundary like that. I wish I could just make that plan and go and do that trip by myself. Like my wife would never let me or this or that, right? Like I hear people at hockey all the time, like, I can't believe you said no to that. Like, man, I would love to do that, right? Or whatever it be.
Yeah.
Right? I think everyone's at a different stage of it and we're all watching each other like test drive this new way of being. Like, what happens if you mark absent for your kid at that practice? Like, you did? You did? You refused to go because it was like too taxing on your family that week? You know?
Nor should you have to
Right?
go, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's how I look at it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. But I mean, there's certain levels of standards for different things. But yes, like there starts to be these conversations of things. The person who calls in sick to work, you're going to have somebody who's a huge martyrer who's like, I can't believe that they wouldn't come in and now everyone else is stuck with their work. And really, they're the ones who are like, I was so sick last week and never called in sick. Yeah. Well, that's on you.
And way to infect everybody else out, by the way.
Well, there's that. But like the only person who suffers from that decision is them. And that's what I remind people.
There's a popular thing going around right now called "let them" theory. Have you heard
yeah.
about that?
Mel Robbins.
Mel Robbins,
right?
let them. And it's like I didn't bother reading the book. I watched a podcast interview with her to get
it's-
it, and it's literally just like you
stop
can
chasing.
just stop chasing and let them behave as they are, and you just be true to yourself. And it's like one of the the host is like, wow, that's so revolutionary. I'm like, no, it's not actually. It should be common fucking sense.
Yeah.
Like,
but some people need a really influential excuse. So they need Mel Robbins' permission to let them.
Yeah.
Instead of recognizing, wow, when this person does this and I have to keep chasing them. And really, when I stop contact and they're not following up in our friendship, like, you know, if I let them, that now suddenly I'm not a bitch for not following up, or I'm not, you know, going to carry guilt or whatever.
And someone said I can.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Whereas really it should be okay anyways. Like,
in a sense, yeah. But yeah, there's so much more connected to it. I also think that there's a little bit of a fuck you with that. And sometimes like this is when people use boundaries as like a throat punch. And they're like, oh, I put up a boundary with that friend. And I was like, ugh. You could have probably had a mature conversation instead, but you're right. You did. You put up a boundary and you completely severed the relationship. Sometimes I think that that is actually unhealed behavior, right?
Oh, for sure.
So there's people who are taking this let them theory and you can use it gently, right?
And that's what I think
them,
it's intended to be used.
It totally is.
Yeah.
Let them. But everyone will always twist something.
Oh, for sure.
And they use it as an aggressive theory, right? So you might say something to piss somebody off and they are like, I wasn't okay with that. You know what? I'm just going to take some time. I'm going to distance myself for a moment and regroup and decide what I need to do with this. And the person who offended them will be like, oh, they're going no contact. Let them. Let them. Right? Like, well, you
started it.
Right?
Like,
and really, hopefully the other person's like, okay, I'll let her.
Yeah.
I'll let her show me what's happening here.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, you know, when we stop acting from our wounds, which again, the martyring wound about, you know, securing connection, making people dependent on us, creating a sense of safety and security, and we get positive affirmation, we feel purpose, all these lovely things. It's not insincere, right? It's just wound guided to make us feel better in the moment as well. There's healthier ways to do it. But essentially, like when we are responding from all of those ways, we don't really give people a chance to show us where they are in our relationships, right? Like, so if you have a friend who's half in, half out, they're like, yeah, I like our friendship, but I really focus on my family, and it doesn't really matter to me if I hang out with my friends or have a bestie and stuff, but I like Janice and blah, blah, blah. Well, Janice might be one of those friends who is like super codependent and needy with friends and just starts like essentially love bombing a friend in wonderful ways of like, let's do this. Oh, I'll pick our kids up together. I'll bring you tea. Oh my gosh. You know, and that's lovely. Like, people want to receive that, but it doesn't mean that's the kind of exchange that Janice wants to be in. Right.
Yeah.
So then when all of a sudden the friend stops, like, oh, well, I'm just going to let her. It's like, well, you didn't really give her a chance to show you that she was just a half in friend.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
There
Especially
isn't.
if there's usually a reason why.
Yeah, because what happens is the friend who gives will eventually start to feel like a lopsided relationship. It's not meeting her needs and is misrepresented or misrepresenting the relationship and will have resentment.
Yeah.
And it's once the resentment boils that people start to really look at what that dynamic is, right? So the let them theory, I think, is, let them show you where they're at.
And then just be willing to, then there's the let me part. Then there's like that, let me accept that for what it is and just enjoy whatever you get out of it, right?
Yeah. And I really wish it was that easy, right?
Well, it's hard. It's funny with all this self-help stuff. It's actually really simple, but it's hard.
Absolutely.
At the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing to kind of emphasize that's why I always tell people, like, yeah, you're a people pleaser, but why? And then when you understand the rooted source of that, like literally wired into your existence for safety and survival, you go, oh, okay. So it's not just because I'm making a bad decision. No, you're actually making the wisest decision for you because you think it's keeping you alive.
Yeah.
Because that is literally what your brain and nervous system are telling you.
That's all anxiety is. All anxiety is death anxiety in some way, shape, or form.
In a sense. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, yeah. So, for you guys, I want you to have a think about, like, where do my martyr-like behaviors tend to show up the most? Because they do. We have them all the time. And then kind of examine, well, where am I okay with it? Because I definitely am okay with it in some areas. And where am I really resentful of it? Like, where has it really picked my ass?
Yeah, because there's going to be those places as well.
Yeah. And then really look at that and be like, so what's the difference between the two? Well, with this one, I always feel not good enough, or they always just take. This one, you know what? 50% of the time, they give it back. And maybe that's why I'm okay with it, because I get some breadcrumbs or whatever. Or you find two martyrs or two healthy givers and you're laughing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's about where you utilize some of that as well. It's very interesting. And, when we think about last season, we talked a lot about like flow and go, right? And getting out of our own way. That's kind of what that let them is, right? And when we don't have to put as much effort into something or stay super focused to force something to happen one way, that let them theory, the organic rolling out of a situation or a relationship is also going to naturally move us into alignment, which just has more flow, right?
Yeah.
If we don't let them, we're probably well off the alignment highway. We're blazing our own beaten path, and it is leading us farther away from our actual desired destination.
Yeah.
Right?
Big time. What was the word I was thinking? It all connects when it's supposed to connect.
Yeah.
As long as you can sort through the hows and the whys.
Yeah, totally. Anything else?
I don't know.
What else?
I think that kind of covers.
I wanted to kind of talk about the religious underpinning, that morality piece. It's funny that the first definition had like a religious underpinning to it, which really was a scare I don't want to say a scare tactic, guys, but
because that was a different time period. Like that, people took all of that very, very, very seriously.
Very seriously, right? So it became a moral framework. And if you did not abide, there was a character flaw, a sin, a way that was looked upon, right? So remember that you may have this martyring wound, but remember where it came from. And where it came from was a deeply rooted, shame-based or pride-based belief system. And that's why sometimes it's really hard to shake it, because there was significant consequences if one didn't abide by a martyring mindset.
Yes,
right?
big time.
Yeah. So remember, when we are undoing these things, we have to remember how big of a deal they were at one point.
Which is why it's carried on for so long, right?
Yeah.
If it was something that didn't matter, it would have died out like thousands of years ago. Like
Right?
we wouldn't be talking about it right now in this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Like Milli Vanilli.
Oh yeah, them.
Just kidding.
Milli Vanilli.
But that's the other piece, right? Remember that we are one step. Oh, that's so funny because my son was in Parloff this morning. And it was really cool to watch, like, the team all play to, like, work together. I hadn't really watched that before, but there's I think 8 of them, and they all have like 8 stations, and they run and pass to the next one and stop at the next station, and they eventually go around the track one entire time each. So that's like 8 passes of the baton in these quick little sprints. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Yeah. And essentially that's what we're doing intergenerationally. We get handed the baton, we move forward in the timeline, and then we get to go through it again, and we get to go through it again, right? And we get to go through it again. And that we get a little closer to the end every time. But remember, that very first run set the tone or the pace for the rest of it. And some of it comes quicker and some of it comes slower.
Yeah,
right?
some people got to run faster to catch up to where they should be or they want to be, and some just kind of trot along.
Totally, right? And my son said, he's like, Mom, do you think that like 2 slow kids can ruin it for a team? And I was like, do you want my honest opinion? He's like, yeah. I said, they do. And he was like, oh. And he felt a certain way about some kids. And I said, but without those 2, your team wouldn't have been able to enter. So that's what you got.
Everyone has a place. Everyone has a place.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Right. And I remember him saying, because he had to leave town right after for a hockey tournament. And he was like, I can't miss it, Mom. I'm in a really important role. And I was like, everybody has an important role in that one, right? And that's just like us in this pattern, in all of these places, everybody has a role. So the ones who are on the receiving end of that martyr baton, they also have a role, and they can choose to stop taking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they can also boundary some of that so that some of those patterns stop.
And
which I think is cool.
I think it should be pointed out too, good communication in all of these fronts can really solve a lot of problems.
Fuck
too. Like, be willing to talk about it.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's lame.
But it works.
It does, I know.
Right? It's funny how that works.
You ever just say to someone like, oh, have you ever mentioned that to them? They're like, no.
Why would I do that? And it's like, well, if you did, it might fix things.
Yep. There you go.
Right?
I would love to do this for you, but I know I'm going to have resentment later on, and then I'm going to hate myself because I chose that over this. And then the person's going to go, oh gosh, I don't want you to come help me then.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the mom who brings like the extra cupcakes for something, if she were to hand it over and be like, oh, I hated this. I had to stay up so late, and then it made me hate you because you told me late, and then I was rude to my kid this morning. Here, eat the cupcakes.
Yeah.
The person would have been like, oh my gosh, you should have told me. I would have said, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, nobody wants to be on the receiving end of that kind of gift. So
No
remember
one.
that.
No, and that's where, I guess, in the way the let them comes in. If someone asks you, hey, can you make the cupcakes? Just be honest, like, you know what? I just don't have the time. And then let them respond how they respond.
I love it. And most of the time, people are so respectful
They are
of it.
99% of the time. Oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's fine.
no
I'll
problem.
make them. I'll get someone else.
Then they'll ask someone who hasn't healed that wound, and they're like, yeah, we got fucking cupcakes
There we
now.
go. We're getting some cupcakes.
Janice brought them.
Janice never says no. There you go, folks.
All right.
That is the end of this week's episode. We got one more coming at you next week to wrap up season 3. So until then, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jolene.
Let them.